Hello, my Built for 1000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled Bones and Woods Leads Detectives to Instagrammer. Ooh. All right. I'm excited to get into today's story. If you guys are excited as I am, please go ahead. Turn them lights down low. Put on something comfy. Cup of something special. Let's get disturbed. This is going to be disturbing. It's Coffeehouse Crime. We all know how this goes.
It took 6 months for family and friends to realize that 27-year-old Shraddha Walkar was missing. But by the time they were able to retrace her footsteps, it was tragically all too late. Moving forward, it was learned that she had become the victim of one of modern India's most prolific murders. Detectives were ruthless in this case, compiling more than 6,000 pages of evidence against her killer. But despite this, justice has not been easy for Shraddha's family, with officers even threatening to use one of the most controversial tactics in the judicial system.
Dude,
and
what?
somehow, it would all lead back to this food Instagrammer. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks. And
what's a food Instagrammer?
Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime.
Is that one of those people that like go to the restaurants and like sit there and eat while talking to you? I don't know what I am a horrible social media person. I know my YouTube. I know my Discord ever so tenderly. If you haven't, go check out the Discord. Yeah, getting ready to change some things around anyways. Wanting to do some things differently. YouTube's going to stay the same, kind of. I got some ideas, I got some plans, got some stuff in the works.
Today, we're traveling to India to look at a case that is close to wrapping up. And just a forewarning here, but it's another one of those terribly morbid stories, so please be prepared. You know, I think I've covered 3 cases now that involves a murderous chef who goes on to be absolutely barbaric. Honestly, what
Can't trust cooks.
is it with you cooks? And Gordon Ramsay, please do not come for me.
Come for him, Gordon. Come for him.
By the way, I post true crime, strange and chilling stories here on a weekly basis, so if true crime is your kind of thing, please do consider subscribing. Thank you. And so, without much further ado, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate.
And if you haven't grabbed your coffee yet, think about grabbing it in a B5 Nation mug. Boom shakalaka. Yeah, if you haven't already, go check out the B5 Nation store. Like, we got some amazing stuff there. And if you don't believe me, go check it out for yourself.
This is the case of Shraddha Walkar.
Getting good at those plugs, bro. Shraddha?
Namaste, folks. We have another international case today, which takes us to the vibrant and chaotic streets of India. Now, I don't need to tell you that India is in a league of its own here. It's a nation brimming with culture, beauty, and of course, tradition. However, there is no denying that some of our heaviest cases have originated from here too, with the likes of the Kolkata House of Horrors and the case of Sheena Bora. But then again, with a population so large, it is no surprise that the country has had its fair share of dark secrets. In fact, India's population has recently surpassed that of China, making it the most populated country in the world. Like most countries, many of its people live in or...
We learning, peoples, we learning. I love learning things.
Around its larger cities, which include Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. However, if you leave the layered urban sprawl behind, you will find yourself in a wilderness teeming with wildlife and a slower pace of living. And this is where today's case begins. Where the jungle and urban sprawl coincide, we can find the small
jungle
city
meets the sky,
located in central India. With a population of just under 100,000 people, and farming as the town's primary industry, it is no surprise that this modest settlement can feel quite isolated from its larger sister cities. But when this story unfolded in November of 2023, the town of Chhatapur found itself thrust into the nation's spotlight for all of the wrong reasons. And it all began with a worried father's phone call to the authorities. You see, several days prior, the authorities had already received word that the remains of a body had been found within the jungle's undergrowth near the city, and after following up with the investigation, this tip-off would prove to be correct. Small human body parts were found scattered in a small area of the forest floor.
Oh, no.
It was determined that they were thoroughly decomposed, suggesting that whoever these parts belonged to had been dead for quite some time. But the gravesite was a regular walking path for locals, so why had they only just been discovered now? And
Exactly.
who did they belong to?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, this happens all the time in India. Remains are found, but with no name or identity, they often become just another Jane or John Doe. But that spark that pushed this investigation further was a phone call from a distressed father. He called the Delhi police to claim that he had not heard from his daughter in over 6 months now, and he was starting to become seriously worried. Now, at first, this wasn't necessarily concerning to him, because unfortunately the two had fallen out in the recent months. But after reaching out and not getting a response back, that is when he started to worry. As an additional safety check, Vikas reached out to her friends to see if she was doing okay. But when they too said they hadn't heard from her in weeks, well, that is when he started to panic. And so, starting to fear for his daughter's life, he reached out to the authorities to see if they could track her down. A few phone calls and procedures later, and unfortunately, they had terrible news to share with him. After recognizing the length of time of her silence did in fact match the rate of decomposition, they decided to run a few tests. And that is when they realized that the body did in fact belong to Shraddha. But before we dive into the investigation and the killer behind her death, let's first take a look at who Shraddha was and what led her to her demise.
Let's do it.
Born in 1995, Shraddha grew up in Vasai, a city in the West Indian state of Maharashtra. Her family consisted of her mother and her brother, who both remain unnamed, and her father, Vikas Madan Walkar. Now, although her family was a functioning unit throughout her earlier years, her parents would eventually split up, leaving Shraddha and her father to live alone. Luckily, Vikas ran his own business in the electronic service industry, allowing Shraddha to grow up without any financial instability. In fact, she had a rather stable childhood and grew up educated under Hindu religious schooling. After graduating, she enrolled in the Viva Institute of Technology, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in mass media production. However, this endeavor was unfortunately rather short-lived, as she would drop out of the course only 1 year later, deciding to find regular full-time employment instead. This decision resulted in Shraddha getting a job at a call center in her mid-20s. She picked this job because it would earn her a rather stable income, and that is when she would meet her long-term boyfriend, Aaftab Poonawalla. Now, coincidentally, Aaftab had actually studied the same course as Shraddha, but at a different college in Mumbai. In contrast, he completed his degree in mass media studies, before ending up at the same call center as her. Funny enough, despite studying the same course and even working in the same building, Shraddha and Aaftab would actually meet through a dating app. With the likes of Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble, they met through the latter, which has over 50 million users globally. Bumble started as an app designed to make friends, and it still tries to boast that title to this day. However, it actually became better known as an app for finding partners of various types. So much so that they had to split the app in two, and they now have Bumble and Bumble for Friends. So, who precisely was this man that she'd found online? As we already know, Aaftab Poonawalla was 28 years old and worked at the same call center as Shraddha. He was born in Mumbai.
That's horrible to go and get a degree, go to college for that long just to get a job at a call center, man. Fuck that, I'd be angry.
To his mother Munira and his father Amin Ben. And shortly before meeting Shraddha, he lived with his brother in the city. People around the family recall both brothers arguing with each other quite often, as brothers usually do.
Yeah.
In fact, there was nothing unusual about the family, and certainly nothing sinister. Shortly after graduating from college in Mumbai, he then moved to Delhi about 1 year before meeting Shraddha. And it's interesting to note here that during this time frame, he would grow a rather sizable audience on Instagram, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Aaftab was actually a trained chef who had taken his love for food to the internet, starting an online presence under the name of Hungry Chokro. It is here that he posted expertly edited photos and edits of the food that he cooked and sampled in the city. This ranging from high-priced whiskey all the way down to your everyday McDonald's Big Mac. His Instagram was by far his most popular platform for posting, and by the time that our case today took place, he had amassed a modestly impressive 27,000 followers. You see, Aaftab boasted himself as a food stylist, and I'll warn you here, if you're hungry, I would advise against taking a scroll, because, to be honest, he was outstanding at his work. You can find many enticing pictures on his Instagram. There are a few pictures of him on there too.
Feed me, Seymour, feed
I don't
me.
own any matching plaid, or I would have to throw that shirt in the bin. Anyway, social media can be very tricky when it comes to sustainable wages, and so Aaftab found himself working at a call center where he would eventually meet Shraddha. The pair began to date shortly after meeting on Bumble in the year 2018. Their romance blossomed fast, becoming very serious within a mere few months. By the end of the first year, they had begun to make plans to move in together, which understandably caused a stir between Shraddha and her family, in particular with her father, Vikas.
Why?
Where her mother and brother were more concerned that
Is that just like an India thing or something? Like, why was everyone so concerned?
she shouldn't rush into things with someone that she had barely met, her father was more concerned with the fact that the pair were of different religions. You see, Shraddha was from a Hindu family, while Aaftab was a follower of Islam. Vikas even went as far to accuse Aaftab of trying to seduce and convert Shraddha to Islam.
Now, is that like bad? Like, is that like a taboo thing? Should that not happen? I don't know. You just don't know. Why is this so bad?
As part of
love is the love, and it's beautiful.
Of a supposed war against India. Now, despite this, Shraddha went ahead with her plans to move in with her new boyfriend, and her father retaliated by declaring that the family had disowned her. However, as we will soon come to learn, he would never wholly cut ties with his daughter, only creating distance as a manipulative form to punish her. Now, all of this was Vikas's own twisted opinions and actions against Aaftab. However, what could not be ignored was the increasing number of friends surrounding Shraddha who grew concerned over the nature of her relationship. After moving in with Aaftab, the relationship seemed to strengthen over time, or at least for a short while. All in all, they would live together for 3 long years.
Cool.
However, as already mentioned, those around the couple sensed that something in the relationship seemed off. And actually, they were right, because the couple were actually struggling behind closed doors. In fact, as early as November of 2020, which wasn't even 2 years into the relationship, 3 of Shraddha's friends had to rush her to hospital after Aaftab assaulted her. And it wasn't just her own friends that became aware of the unhealthy relationship. Her manager at work realized too. Apparently, Shraddha was rather open to her colleagues about Aaftab's abusive behavior, and HR, they desperately wanted to help her, but unfortunately, Shraddha brushed it off. The accusations worsened in December of 2020 when Shraddha showed up to work with bruising.
Man, nobody should ever put up with that shit. Don't be scared. There's many things out there that can help people in this situation. Do not, whether you be man, woman, or child, do not feel like you have to stay there and put up with that shit, man. Seek help. There's plenty of places out there that would be more than willing to help.
Around her neck, forcing her friends to call the police and report domestic abuse. Unfortunately, no legal consequences came from this report, which, sadly, is all too common amongst many domestic abuse cases in India.
That's some bullshit,
with
man.
no solid case, change, or intervention, their relationship simply continued. Although Shraddha stayed with her partner, it was evident to everyone around her that she, sadly, was suffering. Years later, in 2022, the pair decided to try to repair their relationship. They planned a getaway to the northernmost state of India, where they would spend quality time together. Though, as expected, this would not go down as well as they had hoped. In fact, they spent the entire time arguing and getting on each other's nerves, and neither of them would back down. This was evident once again in May of 2022, when they visited the home of Badri, one of Aaftab's friends. According to him, they stayed with him for 10 days at his home, And although the visit was supposed to be leisure, the couple argued almost constantly throughout their stay. It actually got so bad that eventually, Bardry
Look at this
asked
motherfucker
the two
carrying
of them
boxes
to
on his
leave
head.
back to their
What
rented
the fuck?
apartment in Chhatarpur. By now, the pair were both out of work, adding tension to their already isolated lives.
Damn.
Shraddha's friends and former co-workers had attempted to help her in the past already, but it's clear that she was not interested in accepting the fact that the relationship was both unhealthy and likely already over. And so, after years of trying, their
Denial.
efforts eventually petered away, leaving Shraddha with no job,
That's just the
no
river needs it.
co-workers, no friends, and no ambition. The last time that anyone heard from her was in May of 2022, almost 6 months before her father contacted Delhi police. By now, she had been dead for quite a while, and alone for even longer.
Damn, man.
Given the information we know about Aaftab and his now dead girlfriend, it is no surprise to learn that her father immediately pointed the finger at him. Investigators were soon informed
probably
about
was
the
him.
unhealthy relationship,
Piece of shit.
and when her friends caught wind of what happened to her, well, they didn't spare a single detail either. Now, naturally, this firmly shone the spotlight on Aaftab, and investigators wasted no time in tracking him down and then pulling him in for questioning. And to make matters even worse, when they did finally find him, he was extraordinarily evasive and uncooperative with officers, refusing to make any comment about Shraddha. And so, as a result, he was arrested for further questioning. In the meantime, his apartment was searched, his devices were seized, and witnesses compiled for further information. And let me tell you, this is where it gets interesting. Data analysts were rather quick to investigate Shraddha's financial activity. They discovered that the last transaction made through her bank account were 2 payments equaling 54,000 rupees, the
Is that a
equivalent
lot?
of £500 or $650. And surprise, surprise,
not too
but
much.
both of these payments were to Aaftab himself. Both of these payments were made on May the 18th of 2022, near the last time that anyone had heard from her. It is noted that, after these 2 transactions, Shraddha was active on Instagram and had also vaguely texted a few friends in the latter half of May. However, her mobile phone and its trail fell abruptly silent after this, which was rather unusual for her. As the recipient of money from a missing person, Aaftab seemed increasingly suspicious to officers, and so it is also wondered if those final messages were even from Shraddha at all. Now, rather unsurprisingly, but this chilling story would leak into the mass media, and pressure grew on the officers to provide more information about what happened to Shraddha. In fact, the pressure grew so much that Delhi courts were even pushing for a so-called narco test on Aaftab. For those unaware, a narco test involves injecting a subject with an intravenous drug that puts them in various stages of anesthesia, therefore lowering their inhibitions and leaving them more vulnerable to coercion and divulgence for information.
Like a true serum? We actually got true serum? Bro, I just saw some shit that we seen on the fucking movies. 007's real? That should be illegal. And it also sounds like you'd be able to use it to like brainwash people too. I wouldn't trust that. Like if you're that fucked up to where you'd also be able to pretty well brainwash somebody, right? Like I don't like that. I mean, I like it. That's cool. True serum, but also brainwashing serum maybe? That to me just seems like you'd be able to lower their inhibitions enough to where you'd get them to agree with it and they would believe it. I don't like that. I do like the fact that it's true serum though. I mean, we you know, fucking 007 movie now, bruh. James Bond.
I mean, putting it into a more basic way, it's essentially questioning a heavily drunk or drugged person and then using their account to convict them of a crime. Now, obviously, Aaftab was highly hesitant to consent to any such kind of murky practice, and instead weighed up his other options. He probably recognized that he had little chance of getting out of this predicament unscathed, and so he began to slowly drip feed information to the authorities. And as for what he had told them, well, nobody was prepared to hear the gruesome truth. As we already know, the relationship had become dysfunctional and broken. They tried to repair it on numerous times, but money was running out fast, with neither of them working. The obvious answer is that this caused heavy tension between the pair, and then, on May the 18th, that tension eventually snapped into a heated argument over groceries. It is reported that, unfortunately, only a few people tried to contact Shraddha over the following weeks. Regardless, nobody was able to get through to her. I mean, there were a couple people that noticed some online activity for the next couple of weeks, but that too eventually faded. Meanwhile, Aaftab would routinely make trips to the jungle at around 2 AM in the morning. During these walks, he would let go of packages containing her remains.
Are you serious?
Of any trace of his former girlfriend. The more suspicious parts, such as finely ground bone powder, would be scattered on the roads instead. Meanwhile, Shraddha's head was thrown into a pond just outside of town. Now, this information sadly wasn't known until the year 2023. By the time detectives finally learned those details and then drained the pond, they would only find skull fragments. But of course, Aaftab's testimony was enough to determine that those skull fragments likely did belong to Shraddha, adding more evidence to his case. Aaftab would later confess that his actions were a conscious effort to rid himself of Shraddha. But now that he had successfully killed his partner, the question was, what should he do with her remains? Now, according to Aaftab, he knew that he had to act fast to limit the chance of decomposition. However, it was already quite late in the evening, so he decided to hold fire for the night and dispose of the evidence the following day. In the meantime, he transferred a total of 50,000 Indian rupees from Shraddha's bank accounts to his own, which, as we know, would later become key evidence as motivation behind her murder. Aaftab then travelled to Mandir Wali Road in Chhatarpur the following morning, where he purchased trash bags, 3 knives, and a saw from a local hardware store. Ironically, while stowing these items away, he accidentally cut his hand, forcing him to seek help from a nearby doctor who lived in the neighborhood. This doctor's testimony would later corroborate with his story, as did the forensic analysis of the knife wound. After purchasing this body kit, he then ordered a fridge from a local supplier using the money he had taken from Shraddha's bank account. Luckily for Aaftab, the merchant was able to deliver this fridge on the very same day, therefore reducing the rate of Shraddha's body's decomposition.
Well, thank God for that.
According to the young man, this was all he needed to dispose of his girlfriend effectively. And let me tell you, the extent to which he mutilated her is honestly not for the faint of heart. As we know, Aaftab was a trained chef with the knowledge and equipment to process food, and more specifically meat. And so, after dragging her body into the bathroom, he cut her into small pieces using his knowledge to separate parts in the most efficient and clean way possible. He stripped her flesh from the bone before charring the more complex pieces and then grinding them to create fine dust. It would take him several painstaking days over the bathtub, but eventually, Shraddha's remains were unrecognizable. He then separated them into several plastic refuse bags and stored them in the fridge he had purchased just a few days earlier. After that, he ordered bleach, bin bags, soap, gloves, and other cleaning supplies through a local shopping app on his phone, using them to clean the ridiculously messy crime scene.
Damn.
Now, Aaftab claims that the reason an argument erupted
was
because
out of
Shraddha
his
was
way,
verbally
bro.
abusing him. This does seem unlikely because she was known by friends to be very polite and gentle, but the truth is we will actually never know. However, what we can be sure
As my grandma used to say, it's one thing seeing someone out and about. It's a whole other thing when they're behind closed doors.
of is there was absolutely no need for this to escalate past words.
Well, there definitely was no need.
That is precisely what would happen. According to Aaftab, it was in this moment that Shraddha then became physically aggressive towards him. Now, being the bigger of the two, he could have simply walked away or even pulled his phone out to start recording what was happening. But instead of trying to de-escalate the situation,
Or just, night-night. Look, I'm a firm believer if you are in a situation where you should not throw a punch, throw them elbows. Get up underneath that chin, put them night-night. That gives you enough time to get out of whatever situation you're in. You shouldn't have to physically hurt someone, like beat them until they're half dead just to get away. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not the best person to talk about with this shit, man. Like, not a violent person. I can be if I gotta be, but I'm not. I'm just not. I don't think it should have ever got to this point. I think when they first started having problems, they should have, seek help. And then if that didn't work, just be done. Like, don't sit there and keep yourself in more shit. I don't know.
Flee or merely call for help, he fought back instead.
He's just a bitch. He's making up bullshit.
It was then that he pushed her to the ground, put his weight on her chest, and then strangled her.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. That was 100% intentional. Like, if he already had her on the ground sitting on her, he didn't have to strangle her. He didn't. Like, if she's already down, immobilized, what's the fucking point of all the other shit?
Hindsight can be a blessing or a curse, but given everything that transpired, I do bet that Aaftab wished he picked a different logo for his business. One that doesn't read Hungry Choker. And so, using Aaftab's fragmented confession, the physical evidence gathered from their apartment, body parts found in the jungle and surrounding areas, and the digital evidence left behind, it became clear that Aaftab Poonawalla was going to find it extraordinarily challenging to avoid charges against the murder of Shraddha Walkar. After being arrested in November of 2022, court proceedings in the case were relatively slow, unfortunately, as Aaftab would routinely appeal against his charges in an effort to receive the most minor punishment possible and delay court proceedings. The good news is that, as recently as May of 2024, Aaftab's charges were officially outlined after an additional charge sheet was filed against him, with this charge sheet compiling 3,000 more pieces of digital and forensic evidence against him. This included the locations of both Aaftab's and Shraddha's phones in the months between her murder and his arrest, all of which correlated with Aaftab's own account of guilt. With India's relatively loose police force, the evidence available was, sadly, leaked to the media every few months, therefore spurring more excitement and keeping the case relevant in the public eye. And still, to this very day, all eyes are on Aaftab in fierce anticipation of his sentencing. As you can probably guess, this case highlights a significant issue within India. And of course, what I'm talking about here is the treatment of women and femicide.
It's
you see,
disgusting.
Shraddha felt trapped in her relationship with Aaftab.
Excuse me.
She was essentially cut off from her family after following her heart. And after choosing him, he chose to discard her instead. During court proceedings, many witnesses came forward with testimonies against Aaftab and his treatment of Shraddha, including friends, family, and employers. However, one of the most notable sources was actually a recording by Shraddha herself. You see, Shraddha was receiving a therapist's support throughout her relationship, and when summoned to court, her therapist revealed an audio recording from her. Within this recording, she told her therapist that she believed that she could not leave her boyfriend, and furthermore, if she did, he would hunt her down and then kill her. Almost nothing points towards his innocence here, but even so, Shraddha's case stays open to this day. That means, at least for now, Aaftab remains behind bars in a high-security prison. For obvious reasons, this case has become extremely popular in India, and for obvious reasons, Aaftab has become quite the public enemy, both in and out of prison. In fact, he finds himself under attack both in and between prison facilities. It was only a few months ago that masked men with swords tried to take him down. It also seems that most Indians wish that Aaftab receives the death penalty, which is legal in their country.
Hell yeah.
No surprise, but Shraddha's father spearheads this request, armed with some of India's best lawyers. There has been such an enormous outcry for his death that there have been plenty of demonstrations outside of all court appearances. This is no surprise here, but the public also demanded for Aaftab's case to be fast-tracked. Yet he somehow manages to keep getting his trial dates pushed back. In addition to this, he has also changed his lawyer 3 times in a year, with each one of them having to read the 6,000-page charge sheet produced against him. Now, get this, but despite his confessions and, well, pretty much everything we have discussed thus far, Aaftab still actually pleads not guilty to murder. He has shown no remorse for his actions and has not apologized to Shraddha's family or friends. At least He remains alone in his cell, smugly studying his charge sheets
What the
while he
fuck was
demands
that?
special treatment. This including fresh bottled water, new clothes, and extra time out of his cell. But thankfully, he has been denied all additional requests. It also looks like he has developed some kind of paranoia while behind bars, probably due to the intense levels of hatred felt by the public. But after
Probably due to like the ninjas coming into him and trying to kill him with swords. That'd make me a little paranoid too.
Aaftab lives in fear of his food and water being poisoned.
blame
Nobody
him.
visits him in jail, and other than a single phone call to his father at the beginning of his detainment, he has had no contact with anyone from the outside world. Life is
Good.
incredibly lonely for him.
Oh,
Well, I guess he should have cherished the
poor
love and warmth he
thing.
once had before he destroyed it. Speaking of love and warmth, Shraddha was a bright young woman who loved her family and her friends. She was open-minded, forgiving, and generous. But sadly, she gave that generosity and love to a man who abused and then discarded it. Hopefully one day, her killer will receive the punishment that he oh so deserves, whether that be life in prison or no life at all. And so, that brings me to the end of this video today, folks. As always, please stick around on this channel for
all right. Damn, they have motherfucking Indian samurais up in there trying to kill this motherfucker. I love it. I love it. Oh man, I really enjoyed today's story. I mean, I didn't enjoy it to the fact that, you know, that was awful to hear. I did enjoy the fact of the ninjas though. That was fun. But I really enjoyed today's story. Like it's things that need to be talked about. It needs to be out there. Like no woman in the world should have to put up with any man's bullshit like that. That's disgusting. All right. I really enjoyed today's video. If y'all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there, leave a thumbs up. It really does help the channel grow. While you're down there, if you want, go on over and slap that subscribe button. Become part of the B5 Nation. We do some crazy stuff here. If you want to know when that crazy stuff happens, ding that bell and turn on all post notifications. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Damn, Adrian. Oh, I don't know why your videos fuck me up so bad, bro. But they do, and I appreciate you for it.